Protests over the arrest of an opposition leader are continuing for a fourth day in Senegal. Supporters of Ousmane Sonko have been demonstrating since his arrest on charges of rape and inciting protests this week. Shops and other French-owned business interests have been looted, and some international media is reporting tonight that at least 4 people have been killed since the start of the demonstrations. Sonko and his supporters say he's a victim of politically motivated charges and deny that he's guilty of rape. Amnesty International West Africa researcher Ousmane Sonko joins us now live from the capital, Dakar, to talk more about what's going on. Ousmane, a very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. So it all began with the rape charges against Ousmane Sonko. Then came the charges and the arrest for inciting the demonstrations that we've seen this week. How should we be making sense of what's going on in Senegal right now?
Thank you very much for having me on air. And as you said, the incident started a month ago when a complaint for rape and death threats was charged against Ousmane Sonko by a 20-year-old lady. And since he's a member of the National Assembly, he was protected by a parliamentary immunity that was only lifted on Friday of last week. And following the lifting of this immunity, he was convoked by a judge, by an examining magistrate, in order to assess those charges. And that's while he was going to respond to that convocation on Wednesday that he was arrested for disturbing public order and for participating in a non-authorized gathering, because many of his supporters were in the itinerary and the security forces had challenges in containing the crowd. And since then there have been spontaneous demonstrations not only in Dakar but also in many other cities of Senegal, particularly in the south, in Bignona, where the first casualty linked to those demonstrations occurred during the Thursday, 4th of March, when a 20-year-old man was killed by the gendarmerie. But since then, there have been a lot of human rights violations and concerns that we documented, such as the disruptions of the access to internet and social messaging apps, but also the shutting down of TV stations for 72 hours due to their live coverage of the protest. So today it's much quieter than the preceding days, which were characterized by demonstrations and acts of looting against retail outlets. But since the beginning of the protest on Wednesday, at least 4 people have died.
And I want to ask you, Ousmane, then about the shutting down of the 2 TV stations because of coverage of the protests that began earlier in the week, along with the intermittent disruptions to the internet. The idea then was that for the government to clamp down on dissent, and how much has it actually fueled the anger among the demonstrators?
Concerned by the demonstrations that started soon after the arrest of Ousmane Sonko, because there was almost a 1-hour standoff between the gendarmerie and the convoy of Ousmane Sonko while he was deferring to the convocation by the judge. And there was a lot of media presence and coverage, and at one point the gendarmerie dispersed the journalists that were at the scene. And some of the TV stations that were covering the demonstrations, there were also live commentary about the respect for the due process and the human rights concerns and political grievances that existed in Senegal for almost since the 2019 presidential elections. And soon after the beginning of this coverage, the TV regulating body sent a communique warning 3 TV stations about inciting to violence due to the commentary and due to the live coverage of the protest. And a day later, 2 of those TV stations were suspended. And overnight also, we noted that there were disruptions to access to internet, to WhatsApp, to YouTube. And it shows clearly that the government is trying to curtail freedom of expression, especially in the midst of this very tense context, but also is very wary of the coverage by independent TV stations of the demonstrations and the arrest of Ousmane Sonko.
Let me ask you this then, Ousmane. You've got the supporters of Mr. Sonko saying that the charges against him, both the rape issue, the rape allegation, and indeed the subsequent arrest for allegedly inciting people to gather and demonstrate, that all of this is politically motivated and that President Macky Sall is trying to clamp down on opposition voices ahead of elections not too far from now. Is there reason to believe that the courts in Senegal would not be able to see through a political conspiracy against Mr. Sonko and deal with the charges through a fair hearing?
So I think there is a sentiment in Senegal that the justice system is under much pressure by the government for some years, because before the affair Ousmane Sonko, his arrest, there were also the arrest of the former mayor of Dakar, Khalifa Sall, who was convicted for mismanaging public funds and sidelined during the 2019 presidential elections. And also the same thing happened with the son of the former president, Karim Wade, who was convicted and who has been in exile since 2016, and who is due to pay a heavy sum due to his conviction. And both of these candidates have been sidelining during the past presidential elections, and to many, the justice system is instrumentalized by the governing regime, even though we cannot assess whether or not the charges against those opponents are founded or not. But there is a sense that if you are closer to power and if you are an ally of the president, you will not face the full wrath of justice, even if there are charges against you, compared to when you are an opponent or a dissident voice in Senegal. And I think that is the crux of the problem right now. There is very little belief about the independence of the courts, and Ousmane Sonko also in his speech has derided the prosecutor and some of the examining magistrates for being under the thumb of the president. And but regarding the charges of rape and death threats, I don't think it's up to Amnesty International to determine whether or not they are founded, despite the heavy debate in Senegal about a potential instrumentalization of these charges.
All right.
I think it's reassuring that Ousmane Sonko was going to defer to that convocation about those charges when he was arrested for different charges, which are very problematic.
Ousmane Diallo, West Africa researcher with Amnesty International. Good to speak to you tonight. Thank you, sir.